Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Most Merciful. I'd like to welcome you, dear viewers, to another in our series, In the Light of Islam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This program from Sharjah Television is dedicated for you, dear viewers, answering your questions concerning Islam. In this segment of our program, we're continuing to look at some of the many questions which were sent in by students at the Oxford School in Dubai. The next question which they sent in is it haram for a guy to go out with a girl and vice versa? Actually, we looked at that earlier when we talked about issues of girlfriend and boyfriends. So this is where the basis of it being haram lies. The whole issue of that relationship. A boy and girl going out, well, if they're brother and sister, no problem. If they're brother and sister, right? If they're uncle and niece, or aunt and nephew, you know. These circumstances where marriage is impossible, there's no possibility of any relationships developing of that type, then it's permissible. But even so, one still has to take a certain amount of precaution, because young people are still young people. And if they're particularly influenced by, the Western influences which are coming at us through the movies, the television, the magazines, the novels, and all those kind of things, where you can't find any kind of movie, for example, today, which doesn't have some kind of love scenes. And these love scenes are love scenes of fornication, adultery. Basically that's what is being promoted in these movies. I mean, no matter what movie you find today, it could be an action movie. They talk about action movies where, there's either it's military, combat, people are fighting in war, or it's some, gangsters and chasing gangsters, whatever kind of movie, action movie, a lot of shooting, killing, all this kind of thing. I mean, that's bad enough. But in spite of all of that, you must have love scenes. It's got to be somehow the hero is going to fall in love with this one, or she falls in love with him, or something like this. It's there. And they're not married. And you're not talking about marriage. And it's, the corruption is throughout. You can even find in the cartoons, like the movie which was made, the animated movie Ants. It became very, very popular, about some ants in a colony, and I remember the details of it. Someone has to leave and go looking for something or the other, whatever. But this young guy, he wanted to marry the princess, but he was from the lower levels or whatever. But this is a love scene. It's a love story. Ants was a love story, and they end up kissing. Two ants kissing. This is the little kids are watching this. What is being promoted here? I mean, there was adventure and so on so going on in the movie, but there is this undercurrent message of sexual relations, of male-female relations, love, falling in love, and we're not talking about marriage here. We're talking about just falling in love and kissing each other and holding each other and all these kind of things, which is, of course, haram in Islam, clearly haram. But for the West, it's innocent. Nothing wrong. The little boy kissed the little girl in school, and no, there is plenty wrong. This is the beginning of fornication. And this is why fornication is so rampant. And of course, now people, of course, from the Western perspective, I mean, they look at it as being innocent. Why? Because, they have been involved in sexual activity from the time they're in their early teens, some of them even before their teens are involved in it. They've done surveys, for example, now in America, where they're finding kids in primary school, 9 years old, 10 years old, are involved in sexual activity. So, a society which has accepted that, that's become a norm, it's not surprising that you're going to find it in everything that they produce, virtually. I mean, maybe there's some exceptions with National Geographic or something like this. And even there, you still have to be careful. Because sometimes they may throw in something of that in there, on you. But in general, that's what's coming at young people. And if this is the environment which is open to them, and we're not monitoring what they're reading, what they're seeing, what they're doing, then they have been exposed to this. They're growing up with it, and they have these feelings. So a boy and a girl going out, what are they going out for? That is the first steps for haram. So in Islam, we'll say it's haram. Don't go out. Next question, is love marriage allowed in Islam? If not, then how much interaction is allowed before they get married? The question, is love marriage allowed in Islam? What does that mean? They're asking, can you marry the person you love or who you're fallen in love with? Of course. Islam doesn't say that you cannot marry somebody who you've fallen in love with. It doesn't prohibit that. Meaning that you saw somebody for, whatever, Allah's will, not that you, were in some haram situation, but you saw somebody caught your eye, whatever, who you felt attracted to. You felt some feeling for, and you sought to marry that person by honorable means, by going to the parents and talking to them and expressing your desire for marriage, etc., etc. That's perfectly legitimate. And if that the other partner, the other person, saw you and they are also attracted and so and so, and that you're both attracted to each other and you marry on that basis, this is perfectly legitimate. Islam does not oppose, quote unquote, love marriage, meaning that you're supposed to marry without any love being there. There should not be any feelings of love. But, again, when we say feelings of love, what do we mean here? I think in reality what we're talking about is attraction, that people are attracted. Because, what is love? How do you define love? Is love something which, you see somebody, you say, saw the person, fell in love with them right away. Is that love, really? Or is love something which develops in time with relationships, people struggling together, working out their differences, going through all the negatives and the positives together, and out of that comes a bond between the two people, which we now can legitimately call love. The other thing is just attraction, infatuation, People have movie idols. They fall in love with them. Sports idols. They fall in love with them. Is it really love? So what we're talking about, when we're saying about a love relationship, obviously we're not talking about that bond which comes really from living together. We're talking about attraction. Can people marry those who they're attracted to? Of course. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, go and see the one that you want to marry, because it's better for you to put something good in your heart towards the person. It's better. You should marry the person you're attracted to. If your father brings you somebody and says, listen, this person we want you to marry, this person, your cousin or whoever, this person is a friend of ours and so on. You see this person, you're not attracted. Or similarly, the boys are told, listen, this is one of your relatives, your aunt, she wants you to marry her daughter and so on, or there's somebody who's a friend of ours, and you see her and you're not attracted. Does Islam say you should go ahead and marry because your parents want you to marry? No, Islam does not say that at all. If you don't feel any attraction for the person, you shouldn't marry them. No matter, of course, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ had said that people are married for four things: their beauty, their wealth, their family status, and for piety, righteousness, being good Muslims, being religious. He said marry for that reason. Make that the primary reason. However, he didn't say nullify everything else, meaning if somebody comes who's pious, God-fearing, just marry them, even though you're not attracted? No. Islam is not saying that at all. No, if you're not attracted, don't marry the person, because this is somebody you're going to be living with for the rest of your life. And if you don't feel any attraction, you don't feel any feelings towards them, then to put yourself into that situation is to put yourself in a situation which will become very uncomfortable in time. So, the idea of marrying where there is attraction, no, Islam supports it. How much time does a person have to interact? Well, there's no time limit set. You know, if an intention for marriage has been given, you and the prospective groom or bride meet, and you talk in the presence of the fathers, the mothers, you know, somebody else. You're not alone. You talk, you see each other, you may speak, you may communicate, and if you feel a need to meet a second time, in the presence, not on your own, not that the parents agreed, okay, everything's okay, now you can go out together. No. No. Because the fact that there's an agreement for marriage, that doesn't mean now that you can go out together, be alone together, you know, all the things which you spoke about as being haram as boyfriend and girlfriend, now it is okay because marriage has been proposed and accepted. Parents have accepted the idea and they say, okay, a year from now you can get married, so now you can be boyfriend and girlfriend. No, there's none of that in Islam. When a proposal is accepted, then the steps for marriage should begin. If they don't begin, if it's being delayed, then you remain separate as you were before until such time as the steps begin to be taken for the actual marriage. Nothing becomes halal for you simply because your parents have accepted. Beyond, of course, meeting each other in the presence of one of the parents. That's still permissible. The next question: why are mixed dinners haram even among grown-ups? Well, mixed dinners. Mixed dinners meaning a man, his wife, another man, his wife, other men and their wives. We sit around at the table and we eat together. It could be me and my brothers and our wives. So there's a relationship between the men. Or it could be sisters and their husbands. So there's a relationship between the women. But it is still a mixed gathering. We sit around at the table. Now, when we sit at the table, what is happening? We're going to converse. We're going to talk. Is it just me and my wife, and me and my brothers we're going to talk? No, I'm going to talk with my brother's wife and my friend's wife and the other's wife, and we're talking, we're friendly and so on. So we're developing relationships. And when we're talking, we're looking at each other. So we're involved now in putting ourselves in a situation of haram. Because, of course, you talk and you're trying to be friendly and you're looking and something can come in your heart from these contacts, etc. Adultery. This is the foundation for adultery. This will promote adultery. Of course, again, you know, when one is bombarded or one is raised in a Western environment, one will say, what? This is innocent. You know, people do this all the time. You know, in fact, in the West, it's quite common. You and your wife, you go over to visit the neighbor. You know, when you meet them at the door, you go kiss the neighbor's wife, and the neighbor kisses your wife. That's norm in many societies. I'm not saying maybe everywhere in America, but, you know, this was the norm. In Canada, where I grew up, this is what people did. You went to, you know, they greeted each other this way. But what is that? This is the basis for adultery. Though the intention may not be there at all. People are very innocent, but just you know, this is just a friendly gesture. How many friendly gestures were misinterpreted? Or people making a friendly gesture set something going. It's only friendly. We're only shaking hands. We're only kissing cheeks. But in doing that, somebody does it and they get a feeling. Something happens. They feel something, you know, and something starts. That's all it takes. So this in Islam is forbidden. So it is not allowed to sit around in a gathering where the men and the women are looking and chatting and talking. This is the formula for adultery and fornication. That is the formula for it. Now, where, you may have, for example, a lesson being given, somebody's invited to come in and give a talk, and he gives the talk among the men, and the women may be together and listening in another room or in the back or whatever. They're sitting together, and they can listen in, and they can ask questions. So, yes, they're hearing each other, etc. But it's not a relationship. They're not relationships being developed there. This is a situation of lecturing or educational circumstances. The question, why can't a boy and girl be alone in a room? Well, of course, we looked at that before. We said, and this is why we said boyfriend and girlfriend relationships are not allowed. Even where your friend, they're not even boyfriend and girlfriend, but, your son wants to go help your neighbor's daughter who is studying in the same level. She needs some help in her homework, so they go to her room and the door is closed. Forbidden. We said the only circumstance where this would be permissible if your son goes over and the father or the mother is there sitting right between them and he explains how this is done or something like this. It's just, helping. And that's if the parents can't do it themselves, right? So a circumstance like this, yeah, permissible. But to go and be alone in the room, we said, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, the third is Satan. And that's why. Satan whispers into the ear of one whilst they're just doing their homework, isn't he cute? Or isn't she cute? I like the way she looks, this and that. Satan whispers into their ears thoughts, ideas into their hearts, and relationships develop, and they end up in some kind of fornication. So this is why Islam forbids male and females to be alone together. And this includes us as adults. To have a secretary, for example, many of us in our jobs, we are maybe managers or whatever, we have a secretary. Secretary comes in to take notes, the door is closed, you and the secretary. You're dictating notes. Now, you might think, okay, it's innocent, I don't have any intentions. The secretary comes, I'm just dictating the notes. And maybe for the first week, the first month, first 6 months, the first year, nothing happens. But all it takes is once. You're in a weak position, you had some fight at home, you feel bad about your wife, why is she like this? And you come in and you're dictating to your secretary, and all of a sudden, thoughts are coming into your head. She looks nice. Satan is putting thoughts into your head, feeding you now, because you're in a vulnerable situation now. So somebody who you weren't even considering before, now you start to consider. And you being alone with her, that's the formula for disaster. So Islam forbids it. It doesn't say when you have that feeling, that's the time you have to stop. No, because who knows when it happens. It could happen the very first time she came in your room. Similarly, as a secretary, you should know. Women who work as a secretary, you need to work with a female boss. That's the best thing for you. Do not work with a male boss. Or, at the least, if you have to take notes from a male, that the door is open, you're not alone, where people can't see you. It is an open situation, which was going to discourage any kind of, relationship from developing. And the best way, really the most proper way, is that you work for a female boss, that you don't work for a male boss. That's the best thing. And for men, better that you have a male secretary. That's the best thing. That protects you, protects your religion, your honor, your position before God. The last question of these questions about intermingling and these kind of things is, why aren't girls allowed to go out as frequently as boys? And these are students' questions we said from the Oxford School in Dubai. Why aren't girls allowed to go out as frequently as boys? Well, Parents, this is a general double standard that parents will have. They're much more careful about the girls than the boys. Of course, is a mistake because the problem can arise for both. But because if a girl makes a mistake, she gets pregnant, that something will, what do you do after that? Whereas if the boy makes a mistake, he can always come back and it doesn't show. It hasn't affected him in that sense. So people tend to be much more lax with the boys and careful about the girls. But really, care needs to be taken about both. Because the world out there today, unfortunately, is a very corrupt world. And so many of our children are being corrupted and growing up in corrupt states. And this is the same thing when it comes to setting up, for example, Islamic schools. You'll find in communities where Muslims are minorities, they will focus on girls' schools. We need to get a school for the girls, make sure the girls are protected and so and so. We don't want wearing hijab and all these different kind of things. So we have these girls going through schools and learning the proper thing, proper etiquette in Islam and everything, and they graduate, good Muslim girls. And then who are they going to marry? These boys who have been going to the state schools, who had girlfriends and having all these relationships, going to discos and parties and all these kind of things. So now you're saying, okay, now you got to get married. And who is there for her to marry? But a corrupt individual who is, as we say, corrupt to the bone. This is a mistake. If you want, because that marriage is the marriage of disaster. Either he's going to corrupt her, or he's going to beat her, or he's going to abuse her, or whatever. This is the end consequence. But so we should not, and try our best to avoid double standards. What is dangerous for the girls is dangerous for the boys. With that, dear viewers, I'd like to thank you for being with us in this segment of our program, In the Light of Islam. You may write into me through email by contacting me on my website, bilalphillips.com. That's BILALPHILIPS.com. Go to the guest book, leave a message, mention that you'd like it answered on Sharjah Television, for example. Or you may fax to me in Sharjah, 9716 if you're calling us from outside the country, and 06 if you're calling from inside the country, 5323724. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.